Oh, wait a moment. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Federation Hall. And if you're in Zoom land, good afternoon and welcome as well. My name is David Sequeira, and I'm the director of the Fiona and Sydney Meyer Gallery, and I'm also the person that has the privilege of putting the Art Forum program together for the Victorian College of the Arts. And before I introduce our guest speaker, please join me in grounding yourself in the deep, deep knowledge that for generations, the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation gathered on this land. They shared stories, they practiced healing, made paintings, sculptures, practiced dance, and those rituals and traditions continue today. And really, it's with joy and honour that we acknowledge their elders past, present, and emerging. So it's a real joy to introduce our guest speaker, a member of staff, Christopher L.G. Hill, who is an artist, poet, anarchist, collaborator, facilitator, curator, lover, friend, publisher of Endless Lonely Planet, Noise Wall proprietor, gardener, co-label boss, Bunyip trax, walker, homebody, dancer, considerate, participator, dishwasher, graffiti bencher, eater, exhibitor, gallerist, musician and DJ who represents himself. Christopher... Yeah, I think that's worthy of applause, actually. Not for me, but these are Chris's words. Christopher's practice is idiosyncratically involved with that which surrounds it, peers included, in an anarcho syndaclist poetry of sorts. His work takes the form of extended collage in sound, text, and installation, as well as shifting sands of surface and conversations in paint, object, movement, and grammar. Extensions of his practice include a 2-year foray as co-director of Y3K Gallery, as well as Dungeon and Medow Gallery run in Gian Manik's basement, and a tree respectively. Wherever you are, whether you're in Federation Hall or in Zoom land, please join me in making Christopher L.G. Hill very, very welcome.
Show on projector, is that right? Or... Yeah. Oh, it's that one, isn't it? Yeah. Great. Awesome. All right. So to start with, the slides we'll kind of play through several times. And you'll see a few, well, you've probably already seen, but you'll see a few kind of invites for an up and coming show that's on Saturday week, which is just on the screen now, which is a demonstration of kites in the Royal Park grasslands on the 21st. That'll come back on so you can have a look at who's in that, but maybe I'll start by also acknowledging, I guess, I'd like maybe reframe it into my own words, but I'd like to acknowledge the kind of ongoing displacements and genocide of Indigenous people in this, broad kind of continent and internationally. So to start with, I guess I kind of go into these things without too much of a plan, which I think I would say is is that doing? Yeah, which I'd say is a tactical kind of thing for me. I don't I kind of feel quite anchored to words when I have them written in front of me, and often better things come up when I kind of improvise these things. So you'll have to bear with me. I might kind of go off on a few different tangents and not kind of stick to a kind of linear kind of format. But maybe I'll, just to touch back on to what I was saying with the slides, there's, and just to give you a bit of a context for those. So these are kind of exhibitions from the last, I'd say, 15 years, along with kind of the works of other people, collaborations, found images, tourist photos, and yeah, images from a lot of different sources. So yeah, I guess I hope that these will kind of stand in for kind of saying what I'm going to say as much as what I am actually saying, and maybe you can kind of get a bit of an understanding of my practice through these. So my practice is something that I would say is quite a blurry thing. It's not something that's kind of contained to one medium or particularly to kind of the exhibition format. It's something that sometimes occupies those spaces, but also occupies kind of I guess my interactions with the everyday, and this is something that I'd say is intrinsic to it as a practice that purports to kind of engage with a form of anarchism. Yeah, I'm not going to define anarchism, but I think maybe you'll get an idea of what I mean as I kind of ramble through it, and I'll probably touch back on it. I think that, yeah, like I always say I'm not going to do something or that something's definite, and then I kind of question it or go back to talking through it. But yeah, I guess like I guess what I mean is that there's a blurry space between myself as an anarchist and myself, my interactions with other people as anarchy, and the work as kind of reflecting that, and the practice as reflecting that. And one main point that that I kind of maybe said in not so many words would be that it is something that's continuing to self-investigate itself and to kind of work out new ways of being. So those new ways of being in the art practice kind of take the form of reusing and kind of taking things from other contexts, including other people's practices, and the contextualization of those things in relation to each other, but also to the galleries they're in, the social situations that surround them, and I guess how they operate in relation to labor, the lack of labor, and I guess like broader concerns that kind of extend from those political or kind of lifestyle kind of choices. So I guess, some things about my practice that kind of also frame that and kind of contextualize these kind of relationships and poetries that the objects and installations and relationships kind of have would be, I guess, it's definitely a practice that, has very blurry edges. So it is often, I do kind of choose to, well, choose is a strong word. I'm not represented by a gallery. I have a certain independence to the work, and I choose to show in like a multitude of spaces. So some of those spaces that David mentioned at the start, being kind of Dungeon and Medow. So those spaces were one aspect. Well, Dungeon was Gian's basement, and then Meadow is a tree in the Carlton Gardens. So I've kind of had a long, a long kind of engagement with displaying work in kind of different kind of contexts and different kind of spaces or non-spaces. And this is something, that I guess, that kind of the choice to kind of take on different contexts, or the choice to show in like non-conventional contexts, is very much part of me trying to create these new or different spaces for the work, and for me to kind of experiment with. And I guess, yeah, like, so, yeah, I guess like maybe a good kind of example of that, for instance, there was like an image of a painting on a paper plate about 6 slides ago, and that, was kind of attached to a tree on a dead part of the tree with a pin. And that has a much different context than if it's in a gallery. So I think these are not new conversations necessarily, and I'm not kind of, and when I'm kind of talking about these new ways of being or experimenting, it's definitely in relation to within my own context and within my own kind of like shifting or changing kind of framework. But yeah, it does kind of give me these different contexts to kind of understand and think about these materials and the different ideas behind them. And yeah, that's kind of taken me on some interesting trajectories, and I think it's been a good kind of like opening up to kind of working with varying people. Like, so the different spaces I've curated have kind of allowed me to work with other artists in those spaces. And I've kind of always had kind of like since art school had a practice that overlaps with other people's work, and those kind of overlaps I would kind of talk about that way rather than as curation. I kind of see it as being a facilitative kind of relationship or conversation. So I kind of often skirt around the word curation. But I think that it's probably evident in some of the images that these kind of interactions are often kind of ad hoc and sometimes kind of awkward or don't work. And I'm kind of just as interested in those kind of moments where things are kind of have this potential or this kind of energy where they might kind of develop into something else. And I think that's kind of what, like, the potential and that kind of potential to change is something that really excites me, because I think that one of the kind of main, or one kind of important thing I should say with the practice is that it's not that it is kind of a practice. It's an ongoing kind of developing and changing thing rather than being something that's kind of working towards an end goal. And that's, like maybe another point where I'll come back to anarchism, because I think that most forms of anarchism that interest me are ones that are not necessarily laying out a plan of how we'll work and survive in a world without money or leaders or religion or whatever. But are more so ones that are based off kind of developing friendships, developing kind of relationships to difference and to equalness, and how those two things kind of like shift and interact with each other. Kind of, difference and I guess equality, in the context of anarchism. So that's like I guess another layer to this kind of interaction of objects and works and shows and relationships, etc., is kind of, I guess, like a language around the kind of hierarchy of objects. So a lot of I was going to say art history, but I don't know if it's art history. A lot of art history, I guess, kind of like puts certain things as being kind of more important than others. And that's something that, in certain ways is true, but like, I guess with the work I'm trying to create or work towards an equality of an object. So work towards someone seeing kind of a mass-produced figure and then relating it to a pile of straw and thinking about, like, the potentiality of those two things, thinking about the use value, thinking about kind of just an aesthetic kind of value, thinking about I don't know, conversational value, I guess. I guess the work is trying somehow to even that playing field out. yeah, so to circle back yet again, I guess the way that the practice has these different outcomes and is situated in different contexts, not just in kind of solo exhibitions, but mainly in kind of collaborative group shows, and as is coming up now, on online platforms, but also in publications, in kind of audio releases. I guess it's a dispersal of kind of what the importance of kind of outcome and what the importance of play, experimentation is within the practice, so that these things are not just like either kind of written research or kind of exhibition kind of outcomes. These things kind of do have a life as so that a few of the link-based kind of poetry websites have come up that I've done. So there's one called Another You, a voice message mime, which is a 10,000 word link poem that's slowly dying. And then there's like a blog called Counter Fitness First, which is scans and photographs of books. A very long running like pre-Tumblr blog called Jar Jar Sphinx, and a kind of online window shopping. So like a non-consumptive window shopping blog called New Tab and Window Shopper. So there's those kind of, and then I guess there's like the other platforms that outside of like my website and blogs, such as like kind of an ongoing kind of Twitter poetry project, and I guess I contributions to kind of online radio and contributions to I guess a broader kind of algorithmic kind of malaise of like Instagram. So there are these kind of extensions that kind of happen online, and then Endless Lonely Planet, that was kind of mentioned right at the start, is a publication that's kind of been ongoing, although I don't know if it's ended. I've kind of held off the latest issue of it, but it's kind of been the form of like multiple kind of different forms. So the last form, a friend, Sean McMorrow, kind of edited, and then the one before that kind of came out of an exhibition, and then the one before that was kind of a bootleg of this Kaneko Fumiko autobiography, who's a 1920s Japanese anarchist. And then one before that was these, I guess you'll see them in some of the slides, but these kind of words that are on cutout bits of foam core. So that was kind of a kind of traveling kind of poem of sorts. And then there's also been one that was a T-shirt that is probably somewhere in these 400 slides. So there are these kind of different tendrils. I don't know. What's multiple? Like, what would it be? Like maybe these different kind of points where mist is escaping a bog or something, or like where water is coming through a tree root or something. I don't know. But there's these different directions that these things are going in that are outside of the gallery. Which has that kind of relevance to that kind of importance on different kind of elements of practice, but is also, I guess, propositionally, I would say, but sometimes actually kind of an interaction with the everyday world. And I think that that's kind of something that like art often grapples with, and kind of I grapple with, is this kind of how are these kind of desired objects, how do they become kind of part of the world, and particularly for me outside of kind of commerce. So so I guess that's another kind of aspect of the practice. I've never I've sold one artwork when I was at art school, and then the other ones that have been sold as part of fundraisers. But it's definitely an important part of the practice, is making that decision that the work is never going to be for sale. So how do I interact with these objects and things to kind of interact with the world when they're not for sale? So normally it's by giving them away, or them being in the world. Like I think there is, a presence of art being in a gallery where you are giving something. It's not, you are kind of putting yourself out there personally and you're kind of interacting with the world. But yeah, like how do these things kind of extend past that kind of space? So that kind of interaction with, like how, like so often, and this is kind of a good example of kind of over documentation or kind of like kind of flooding kind of online platforms with information can be a way to kind of get that experience of, well, somewhat that spatial experience of art, but also that kind of like conversational, interactive kind of aspect of art. Sometimes a screen can kind of flatten that. So that's one kind of reason that it's kind of extended in these ways on those online platforms. But also because I think, there's also an aspect to the world where you can never completely like block the world out. Like you can have a white cube kind of space with like doors and no windows, but there's always going to be the sounds of the drills next door, or there's going to be the people coming in and leaving their backpacks on the ground. There's always kind of things that are going to interact with the work. So I kind of guess that this, like the kind of maximalism or the volume of the work is such that that I hope it like infiltrates the rest of the world. And maybe there's something kind of a bit anarchic about that as well. What haven't I touched on? Maybe I guess one of the other projects that I didn't mention in the bio is partially because it finished a couple of years ago, is the Melbourne Artist Facilitated Biennale. So this was a kind of 10-year project that I did starting in 2008, where I kind of followed on from, there was a state-run kind of Melbourne Biennale in 1999, and this kind of was my model of continuing on from that and kind of extending it to what would I guess like anarchist Biennale look like in my mind, although obviously a lot of other people were involved in different kind of contexts. But for me, that kind of was the starting thought of like, how does, like why, like I guess a DIY kind of approach to a Biennale, like why does a Biennale kind of have to be run by the state, and why, and why do states kind of do these Biennales, and why do they kind of have these displays or these kind of expos of kind of like what is seen as being like the representation of, like, I guess in a lot of times the freedom and expression of a country. So that kind of started off at TCB when it was in the city, and kind of had a bunch of different iterations, similarly to Endless Lonely Planet, where it kind of interacted and operated with different formats. So those, I guess the formats were, in this context, were the kind of spaces that they were in. So it was, so the first one was at TCB, and then the second one was at the Fiona Sydney Meyer Gallery, but when it was the Margaret Lawrence Gallery. And then the third one was at Y3K, the gallery space that we kind of mentioned at the start, which was like a 2-year kind of artist-run, two-person artist-run space in Fitzroy that we ran a lot of interesting kind of shows out of. And then the fourth one was probably the most challenging of the Biennales, which was at Tarawara, and that was part of their Biennale. So it was a Biennale inside a Biennale, which was a great idea. I was very excited about it, but it was quite challenging, and it was probably a show where I had artists who challenged the gallery the most in that show. There were quite a few works that the gallery weren't that comfortable with, which was interesting, because I'm normally not I can tell the whole God story if you want, but it's a long story and there's other people involved. I don't want to throw anyone under a bus, but there are there was some drama, but that was what 2000 I think it was like 2016, and yeah, I'm almost over it now, but not quite. Yeah. No, I am. It's fine. And then yeah, the final Biennale was in my apartment. So me and my partner were, as most people, kind of starting to feel the pressures of rent and decided to buy an apartment, which it's not like everybody, but I'd kind of gotten quite good at saving and I'm quite a frugal kind of person and had enough money to put a down payment on an apartment. And we found an apartment that was in the building that the original Biennale had been in. So I thought, full circle, a private Biennale, and it kind of that was also a very good experience because it made me think about, I guess, even more about that kind of public and private divide that kind of overlays kind of public institutions and spaces, and how, yeah, that can be very blurry or very prickly or kind of can be hard to navigate at times. So yeah, it was kind of open. It was kind of by appointment, and I don't think a lot of people came around to it in the end. But mainly it was people coming for dinner, people who were in the exhibition who saw the show. I mean, partially why people didn't come around was 1 year. So it was so the last Biennale was a 2-year Biennale. And 1 year of that was mainly kind of during lockdown. So it was kind of like a little bit limiting for having people visit the house. Yeah, so that's kind of one project. There's so many different projects, and I know that, like, as a teacher, I often say that people should focus on one thing and narrow it down to talking about the one thing, and I'm doing the opposite. And yeah, that's what's just happened. I apologize for advising people to do that sometimes, but no. But part of the point is, like, I want to share a lot of stuff, and there's over 15 years things do change, and there are a lot of different directions. And I think sometimes talking about like one project in relation to what I'm interested in exploring can be kind of hard to do, but maybe mindful of the time. How are we going time-wise, David? Yeah. Okay, maybe I'll just to finish off, I'll do the self-promotion kind of thing again to start and end with this exhibition that's come up on the kind of flyer. So there should be a pun for that as well. But the flyer for the kite show has kind of come up a couple of times, and it'd be great if everyone could come along. It's now I've forgotten what time it is. 5 to 6, 4 to 6. Gian, you're no. Gian's in it. I think it's 4. It'll come up again in a sec. There it is. 5 to 7. 5 to 7. So 5 to 7 on the 21st of September, which is Saturday week, featuring Lou Hubbard from the photography department here, Rafat Ishak from the painting department here, Raquel Kamuris, who did painting 2 years ago. Gian, Kaylin Norris, who studied in painting in 2017. I'm going to guess 17. He's not here to defend himself. Virginia Overall, my partner, Nick Selenich, who also teaches in the painting department, Amy May Stewart, who studied in painting in 2010, and Frances Waite, who finished here last year or the year before last year, and Dylan Martorell. So that'll be fun. Come on. Maybe I'll finish there. Maybe, yeah. I think I'll finish there. I don't think that's a good point to finish there.
Thanks so much, Chris, and please stay there because I think, should we have the lights up or keep the slides rolling for questions? Keep the slides. Okay, great. I'm sure there are lots of questions, and I've certainly got lots of questions, but I'm going to hand over to the audience here. Is there anybody that's, yeah, please, Masato, thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
As a provocation, there was
Yeah. No. I don't think there ever is one thing. Like there's an N, there can be like there can be nodes or points where it's maybe navigated through the one thing, but I think it's always lots of things. So maybe am I agreeing with you? Maybe a little bit. Yeah, I think I am. But yeah, like I think that, yeah, like in suggesting people do a singular thing, it's not, I don't actually always suggest that. Even when I said that, I was like, no, I don't really say that. It's just when that seems like a good thing to do, or that I think that that's what they might want, the student or person who I'm talking to might want to do. Yeah. Is that answering your question enough, Marcelo? Yep, great, thanks.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Or Joseph, do you want to go first, and then yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I guess no, they are intentional. I'm just trying to think of what the intention of it is, though. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's yeah, like I guess that hierarchical thing that I've touched on in a few different contexts is probably an aspect of that, where I think like often like with Instagram particularly, the algorithm of kind of like photos of people is a lot stronger than photos of yeah, like a scratchy on the side of a train, or a plastic bag in the gutter or something, you know. So I think, yeah, so there's that kind of aspect of it where I'm navigating to, I guess, yeah, like flood or somewhat circumnavigate the yeah, that kind of algorithmic pool. And that's partially like the liking everything. Like, I don't know, like sometimes I'm like, oh, does this cancel it out? But it's also just, I feel like I do, like you do get like the endorphin rush from pressing the like as much as you do from liking something, which most people don't really think about, I think. Like, so if you're just like pressing it and not really thinking about it, there is, yeah, like a mild kind of endorphin rush from that as well. Like if I'm being transparent, yeah, yeah. Is that enough of an answer? Or do you want more? Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I think I definitely prefer the gallery kind of outcome, the gallery and like non-gallery spaces more, because it is very much about, yeah, like, yeah, personal interaction with other people, but with me, with the materials and the work, and with, yeah, other people's interaction with the work. So I definitely prefer that, but I guess I try to use the social media to create a different dimension of experience with that, where you're like, often people, like I have friends who are like, oh, I was waiting to see like which small, like insignificant detail of the work you're going to photograph when I like go to their show. And I'm like, that's really mean to me, because I think it's really significant. But I understand that you mean it endearingly. Yeah. Yeah, often. Yeah, 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 Lisa. Yeah. 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 And that goes, like my experience of that has been that it kind of goes both ways as well, a little bit. Like sometimes, like I think with any person who's organizing an exhibition, there's often, someone changes the work at the last minute or yeah, a work kind of dictates that you kind of change your idea of how the kind of installation is going to be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, well, I think good is almost like in my eyes, like good is that equality, like within an anarchist kind of framework. Like good is, yeah, something that's like considerate and like equal to the things around it. Yeah. So that's kind of an ongoing kind of thing rather than being that I pick the good things to put in the thing. It's more that I pick the things and then maybe they're out of balance with the other things or they're yeah, but no, I mean, there's always going to be some like aesthetic, like personal subjective aesthetic kind of thing to that as well. But yeah, but that's the framework I try to work with is that kind of developing a relationship between. Oh,
Anyone else? Yeah.
yeah. Mm -mm. Yeah. 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 Well, it's a challenging thing to balance them in that way that I was just talking about in relation to Lisa's question, because yeah, there is that kind of historic thing that a painting is more important than the plushie. But yeah, so part of that is the challenge of that. Like I like to kind of not like it's not like it's not like a Zen kind of approach where everything is going to be like white and neutral. There are these kind of like a lot of points of difference, and it is a negation of trying to balance that out. But yeah, the made and the found is definitely kind of a challenging one to balance. And I guess like with some of the images and this is one of the problems of my approach to like with this one, for instance, there's collage onto an object. So it's got the found images on the uh, the the lock or whatever that was. And then with the paintings, I guess when I'm working with other people's paintings, in some ways, to like if I'm using them as an art material, they are a found object. So there's kind of a few different layers to that. But when I'm making them, I kind of do also treat them as how they like a painting works both as an object, but also as an object that I have some objective kind of distance from, which I think like most artists kind of try to look at their work. But it's a tricky balance, which is why I can't have too definitive an answer to it. Yeah. Oh yes, yeah. 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 Okay. Yes. It's answer. Yeah, go on. Yep. Yep. Yeah, sure. So I guess those are things that are probably considered more performance than other parts of practice. Yeah, it's this, I guess all of it is this interaction between being like performative in that it's an exhibition rather than an actual setting, and these things don't actually follow a function, so they're performing kind of, yeah, the objects are performing in some shape or form. But they also interact with the rest of the world, and the sound practice and DJing is probably like that as well. I guess like DJing is probably a good example of something that is both performative but also like interacts with other people through kind of found material, you know. So yeah, so yeah, I don't know. It kind of yeah interacts and does the same things as the practice, but sometimes it has more of a focus on like interactivity, I guess. Like some of the art practice has had interactive elements, but that I haven't really touched on, but mostly it doesn't, in that you can't pick things up and play with them and stuff. But like with the sound practice, yeah, I guess people are hopefully dancing to a DJ set. So there's that interactivity. And with the sound, yeah, it's kind of part of like overlaps with the internet presence of these kind of like international kind of networks of kind of communicating and contacting with people through kind of expressing yourself in different ways. So some of those sound projects, you know, might yeah, result in like releasing a tape on some label in, yeah, I don't know, where, like Brisbane or something, or somewhere else. Or yeah, so there's that. So it's part of that, yeah, like extending into everyday life, but also an extension of those, that abstract of trying to, yeah, not hierarchize things, which is, I feel like isn't really answering your question too much, but hopefully that's enough, like a framework for what it sits in. Yeah. Cool.
I've got a question.
Yeah, sure.
I wonder, I know you're reluctant to say what anarchy means,
Yeah.
but I just wondered if over the course of your career, I think you said 15 years, is it longer than that?
Yeah, longer than that, but yeah, these slides are all from 15 years.
Right,
Yeah.
and I just wondered whether anarchy, the meaning of anarchy for you,
Yeah.
and whether practice that is around anarchy
Mm.
has altered. Like, has anarchy come into a mainstream? Are you constant? You know, is it fixed? How does that show up across an extended period of time? Like,
Yeah, I think the language of it has, I've gotten more adept at the language of how to talk about like what it is, that relationship with anarchism is, because I think often it gets seen as being like this very fixed thing when it's kind of the opposite of that. Like in most contemporary kind of understandings of it, there is like historically kind of, you know, people have kind of had to level kind of a case for why it's a good idea in different, you know, different kind of political debate or like academic kind of debate situations. But for me, as like why I choose to explore it within an art practice is because I think that in a lot of ways it is very similar to what art is, and really it's just a way to explain that kind of ongoing development of a language within the practice. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely developed over time, and I've kind of, you know, with what I read and what I look at, it's kind of informed it. But that's, yeah, of course, along with a lot of other things and kind of interactions with other people and stuff. Yeah. Thanks, David.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. It's a self-contained and independent animal. I like that, you know, that they have their home on their back. I just like turtles. No, I think there are kind of, yeah, I think they're an interesting symbol of something that kind of moves around with kind of like I mean, yeah, there's flaws in this kind of like analogy, but yeah, it kind of has this symbology of being like an animal that carries its home around with it that I find is kind of strong. Yeah, I think that's kind of the main thing. But yeah, that was kind of for like a lot of them are from an exhibition I did last year at Goya Curtin that was called Turtle, that was kind of around some ideas of turtle, and it was an exhibition that was on like in a kind of traditional kind of like bed sit kind of Japanese house on it's gone, but on like tatami mats. So there was kind of this relationship to like the surface, the different kind of surfaces of shells and tatami mats, and yeah, being kind of, it's on a second floor, which is something I'm often interested about, like where in the building an exhibition is, and something about the top floor as being like both like not connected to the world because it's not street frontage. So it's got this kind of containedness to it, but yeah, also like a floatingness to it. And I think that's something I think about with turtles, that they do like literally they do move around with legs, and they are kind of connected to a surface, but there is something about them that when they're in their shell, it kind of feels like they're floating, like a hovercraft or something. Not that they literally are. Yeah.
I think we're going to leave it there.
Yeah,
Chris,
thanks.
thank you so much for please. So, thank you so much for your generosity today, and thanks everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next week for our art forum. It's the last one before semester break, so see you then. Cheers.
Thanks.
Oh, there we are.
It's just slow. It's just a slow
mute. Hey, thank you for that.
No, it was good.
Thanks for, taking us on the meander and taking us through all of that. It's kind of interesting and evolving, and it's a really good way to do an art forum. Just like let the slides roll along.
Yeah.
It's great.
What keeps you?